You are not just another person the avoidant has dated or been involved with. You are their endgame, the person they've mentally reserved as their ultimate option, the one they think about when they imagine finally being ready for real relationship, the standard against which everyone else is measured and found wanting, the person they believe they'll end up with eventually when they've done their work, or when circumstances align, or when they're finally capable of sustaining what you offer. This designation as their endgame is both recognition of your exceptional qualities and your significance to them, and simultaneously a burden that places you in an impossible position where you're valued theoretically while being unavailable to practically, where you're held in reserve for future that may never come, where you're considered too important to lose, but not important enough to do the difficult work of showing up for right now. The avoidant thinks you are special in ways that go beyond their typical attractions or connections. You saw them more deeply than others have seen them. You accepted them more fully than others have accepted them. You created safety that allowed glimpses of their authentic self that others never access. You understood their patterns while maintaining your own worth in ways that made them respect you. You offered combination of qualities they recognize as rare and irreplaceable. This recognition of your specialness creates a specific relationship with you in their mind, where you're not just someone they dated and it didn't work out, but someone they're keeping in reserve, someone they think about in long-term timeline, someone they imagine being with when they're ready, even if they're not ready now, someone they cannot fully let go of, because you represent their ideal or their hope for what relationship could be if they could overcome their limitations. Being the avoidance endgame means they've mentally categorized you as the person they don't want to completely close the door on, the person they want to keep as possibility, even while they cannot commit to you currently, the person they return to in their thoughts when other relationships don't satisfy, the person they imagine reconciling with in fantasy future where they've magically developed capacity they currently lack. This end game status affects how they treat you. They might maintain some connection or some thread of communication. They might resist complete closure or definitive ending. They might breadcrumb just enough to keep the possibility alive. They might express that timing isn't right rather than admitting they lack capacity. They might frame the inability to be together as circumstantial rather than as fundamental limitation in themselves. Why you occupy a different category in their mind than anyone else. You occupy a fundamentally different category in the avoidance psychological landscape than other people they've dated or been involved with. And understanding why you're categorized differently reveals both your genuine significance to them and the specific qualities that make you their endgame, rather than just another past relationship. This different categorization is based on concrete differences in how they experienced you and what you provided that others could not provide. You occupy a different category because you penetrated their defensive structure in ways others never did. Seeing and knowing their authentic self beneath the defended exterior, they show the world. Most people the avoidant encounters interact only with their surface, the independent, capable, together persona that's designed to prevent deeper connection and protect vulnerability. These relationships remain superficial, even if they last months or years, because the avoidant never allows the other person to see beneath their defenses. But you saw through them. You recognized their patterns as defenses rather than as their true nature. You perceived their wounds and their fears. You understood why they behaved the way they behaved. This penetration of their defenses, this being truly seen, is rare experience that the avoidant doesn't have with most people. It creates different level of connection and different level of threat simultaneously. You're special because you saw them, but you're also threatening because being seen creates vulnerability. This combination of being deeply known and still accepted places you in category that others don't occupy. You occupy a different category because you accepted them with their limitations and their patterns while maintaining your own worth and boundaries, creating balance others couldn't achieve. Many people who encounter the avoidant either accept them completely without boundaries, becoming doormats who enable their patterns, or they have strong boundaries but cannot accept the avoidant's limitations, becoming frustrated and leaving quickly. Neither of these creates the special status, but you achieved balance. You accepted them as they were. You had patience with their patterns. You tried to understand rather than immediately judging, but you also maintained your own worth. You had boundaries. You didn't lose yourself in their dysfunction. This balance is rare and is what makes you special. You showed them what it's like to be accepted without being enabled, to be understood without being indulged, to have their patterns recognized without being condemned. This balance of acceptance and boundary, of understanding and self-worth, is exactly what healthy relationship requires and is rare enough that they cannot easily find it elsewhere. You occupy a different category because you create a level of emotional safety they hadn't experienced before, allowing them to be vulnerable in ways they couldn't be with others. The avoidant spends most of their life feeling unsafe, emotionally, feeling that vulnerability will lead to rejection or hurt, or being controlled. Most relationships don't create enough safety for them to lower their defenses even slightly. But with you, they felt safe enough to show you parts of themselves they usually hide. They were vulnerable with you in ways they weren't with others. They shared feelings or fears or needs they typically suppress. They experienced moments of authentic connection that their defensive system usually prevents. This safety you created, this permission to be vulnerable, is profound experience that places you in different category because you're the person who proved vulnerability could be safe, who demonstrated that being known doesn't automatically mean being rejected. You occupy a different category because the connection with you touched their core wounds and their unmet needs in ways that superficial relationships never touch. Most of the avoidance relationships stay superficial enough that they don't activate deep wounds or deep needs. These relationships are manageable precisely because they don't matter enough to touch the core. But the connection with you went deeper. It activated their longing to be truly known and loved. It touched their wound about not being acceptable as they are. It awakened needs for intimacy and connection they usually keep suppressed. This activation of core wounds and core needs, while threatening and overwhelming, also marks the relationship as profoundly significant. You're not just someone they dated. You're someone who reached parts of them that usually remain unreached, someone who activated longings they typically keep dormant, someone who matters at soul level rather than at superficial level. You occupy a different category because you were patient and understanding in ways they haven't experienced, demonstrating extraordinary tolerance for their patterns that made them feel seen and accepted. The avoidant is accustomed to people giving up on them relatively quickly, frustrated by their hot and cold behavior, unwilling to tolerate their withdrawal patterns. But you had patience that exceeded normal tolerance. You tried to understand when others would have left. You gave chances when others would have written them off. You maintained hope when others would have accepted impossibility. This patience, while potentially excessive and potentially enabling, communicated something powerful to them, that they were worth the effort, that someone could see their patterns and still choose to stay, that their dysfunction didn't make them unlovable. This communication of worthiness despite patterns is profound and places you in special category because you're the person who proved they could be difficult and still be chosen. You occupy a different category because you represent their ideal or their vision of what relationship could be if they were capable, making you symbol of possibility rather than just person they dated. To the avoidant, you're not just you. You're a representation of what they want, what they wish they could have, what relationship could be if they didn't have their limitations. You showed them vision of partnership that includes understanding, acceptance, patience, genuine intimacy. You demonstrated what it would feel like to be with someone who truly gets them. This vision, this possibility, becomes idealized in their mind. You're not just the person you are, but a symbol of everything they want and everything they're incapable of sustaining. This symbolic status places you in different category because you represent hope and possibility, an ideal that others don't represent. You occupy a different category because they genuinely respect you in ways they don't respect most people, recognizing qualities in you that they admire and that they don't find commonly. The avoidant might date people they're attracted to, or people who are convenient, or people who don't trigger their defenses, but respect is different and less common. They respect your strength, your boundaries, your emotional intelligence, your capacity for insight, your ability to see them clearly. They recognize you possess qualities they admire and that they don't often encounter. This respect, combined with attraction and with the depth of connection, creates category that others don't occupy. You're not just someone they had feelings for. You're someone they respect, and respect from an avoidant who struggles to respect people who need them or pursue them is meaningful distinction. The specific ways they reserve you as their ultimate option. The avoidant person doesn't just think of you as special or significant. They actively reserve you as their ultimate option, their endgame, through specific behaviors and mental frameworks that keep you available in their mind as future possibility, even when they cannot commit to you in present. Understanding these specific reservation strategies reveals how they maintain you as their option and what this reservation looks like in practice. They reserve you as ultimate option by refusing to create complete closure or definitive ending, keeping the relationship or connection in an ambiguous state that preserves future possibility. When relationships end with others, the avoidant might create clean break, might be definitive about it being over, might close the door completely. But with you, they maintain ambiguity. They don't say it's completely over. They frame it as timing isn't right, or we're not ready right now, or maybe in the future. They leave door slightly open through their language and their framing. This ambiguity is strategic, whether consciously or unconsciously. It keeps you as option. It prevents complete closure that would eliminate possibility. It maintains your availability in their mental framework as someone they could potentially return to when circumstances change or when they change. They reserve you as ultimate option by maintaining some thread of connection or communication, even when they cannot commit to actual relationship, keeping themselves in your awareness and keeping access to information about your life. The avoidant might reach out periodically with breadcrumbs, text asking how you are, message on your birthday, share of something that reminded them of you. These minimal contacts serve multiple purposes, but primary function is maintaining thread of connection that keeps you as active option in their mind and that keeps them somewhat present in your life. They're not ready for relationship, but they're also not willing to completely disconnect, because disconnection would mean losing you as future option. The periodic contact maintains their access to you, maintains your awareness of them, maintains the possibility alive in ways that complete silence wouldn't allow. They reserve you as ultimate option by comparing everyone they date to you and finding everyone lacking, reinforcing in their own mind that you're the ideal they're holding out for. The avoidant dates other people after you, has other relationships or involvements, but constantly compares these new people to you. Do they understand me like you did? Do they accept me like you did? Do they create the same feeling that you created? The comparisons consistently favor you because they're comparing real, flawed people to idealized memory of you. This comparison process reinforces your status as the endgame. These other people are temporary or are settling because they're not you, and you remain the standard, the ideal, the person they're really waiting to be ready for. The reservation is mental and comparative, using you as benchmark that current partners cannot meet. They reserve you as ultimate option by framing their inability to be with you as timing issue or circumstantial, rather than as fundamental capacity issue, maintaining belief that future version of themselves will be able to have relationship with you. The avoidant doesn't admit to themselves or to you that they lack fundamental capacity for the intimacy that relationship with you would require. Instead, they frame it as timing. I'm not ready right now. I need to work on myself first. The timing isn't right for us. This framing preserves you as viable future option because timing can change, circumstances can align, future version of themselves might be ready. This is more palatable than admitting, I lack capacity and may always lack capacity, which would close the door more definitively. The timing narrative keeps you reserved as option for future when timing might be better. They reserve you as ultimate option by maintaining awareness of your relationship status and your life circumstances, monitoring whether you're still available or whether you've moved on in ways that would eliminate you as option. The avoidant pays attention to your social media, asks mutual friends about you, stays aware of whether you're single or in relationship. This monitoring serves their need to know whether you're still viable option. If you're still single, if you haven't completely moved on, you remain available in their mental framework as someone they could potentially pursue if they decided they were ready. If you enter serious relationship with someone else, it threatens your status as reserved option and often triggers their panic or their increased interest as they face losing the option they were holding in reserve. They reserve you as ultimate option by keeping mementos or maintaining environmental reminders of you that keep you present in their daily awareness even when you're not in contact. The avoidant keeps photos of you in their phone, even if hidden. They keep gifts you gave them. They maintain items that remind them of you or of experiences you shared. These physical reminders serve as anchors that keep you present in their mental landscape, that reinforce your significance, that maintain your status as important person in their life, even when you're not actively in their life. Someone they'd fully moved on from, someone who wasn't reserved as option, would have their photos deleted, their gifts discarded, their reminders removed. The keeping is evidence of reservation. They reserve you as ultimate option by telling themselves narrative that when they've done their work or grown or changed, you'll be the person they come back to or pursue properly. The avoidant maintains internal story about future. When I'm ready, I'll reach out to them. When I've addressed my patterns, we can try again. When I'm in better place, I'll show them I can be what they need. This narrative keeps you reserved as the person they're working toward being able to be with, the reward for their eventual growth, the relationship that will work when they're finally capable. This future-oriented reservation allows them to maintain you as option while not having to do the actual work right now, while not having to face current limitations, while keeping you as distant possibility rather than as present. Reality requiring immediate capacity they don't have. How being the end game creates impossible position for you. Being the avoidance end game, while seemingly flattering recognition of your significance and specialness, actually creates impossible and painful position for you, where you're valued in theory, but not in practice, reserved for future, but unavailable in present, held as ideal, while being unable to access actual relationship. Understanding the impossible position helps you recognize why being the endgame is burden rather than privilege, and why this status doesn't serve your actual needs or well-being. Being the end game creates impossible position because you're asked to wait indefinitely for future readiness that may never materialize while your present needs for relationship and partnership go unmet. The avoidant has reserved you as their ultimate option, as the person they'll be with when they're ready. But when will they be ready? There's no timeline, no concrete plan, no evidence of work being done to develop capacity. You're expected to remain available for undefined future possibility while the actual present of your life passes without the partnership you desire and deserve. This waiting position is impossible because you cannot build life around someone else's potential future. Readiness cannot put your own relationship needs on hold for promise that has no guaranteed fulfillment. Cannot organize your timeline around someone else's uncertain development. Being the end game creates impossible position because you're valuable enough to be reserved, but not valuable enough to motivate current change or immediate commitment, revealing that your specialness isn't sufficient to overcome their limitations. If you were truly so special, if you truly were the end game, wouldn't that specialness motivate them to do the work now, to seek therapy now, to address their patterns now so they don't lose you? But it doesn't. You're special enough to think about, to miss, to reserve for future, but not special enough to motivate actual present tense transformation. This reveals painful truth. Your specialness exists within framework where their patterns and their limitations are more powerful than your significance. Being reserved as endgame means you're important, but not important enough to create urgency about change. Being the endgame creates impossible position because you're expected to remain emotionally available and potentially romantically available while they explore other options and refuse to commit to you. The avoidant wants to keep you as their ultimate option while simultaneously dating others, exploring other possibilities, living their life without commitment to you. You're supposed to be understanding about this, supposed to wait patiently while they see if they can find what they have with you elsewhere, supposed to remain their fallback while they prioritize their freedom and their defended independence. This position is degrading and painful because it treats you as backup plan rather than as priority, as option to be exercised if nothing better materializes, rather than as valuable person to be chosen and committed to now. Being the end game creates impossible position because your actual human complexity and needs are ignored in favor of idealized version of you that exists in their fantasy, meaning real you is not actually being valued or considered. The avoidant has idealized you in their mind, has made you into symbol of perfect relationship or perfect partner. But this idealization isn't actually about real you, with your actual needs, your actual complexity, your actual life circumstances. It's about fantasy version of you that exists to fulfill their needs when they're ready. Real you needs partnership now, needs consistency now, needs someone who can show up now. But being the end game means being related to as future fantasy rather than as present reality. And this denial of your actual present tense humanity is form of objectification that doesn't serve you. Being the end game creates impossible position because you're kept in limbo where you cannot fully grieve and move on because the possibility remains alive through their reservation of you. If the relationship had ended definitively, if they'd closed the door completely, you could grieve the loss and move forward with your life. But being the end game means the possibility is kept alive. Maybe they will change. Maybe timing will align. Maybe they'll come back ready. This maintained possibility prevents clean break and prevents full grieving, keeping you stuck in limbo, where you're not together, but you're not completely done. Where you're not building toward future with them, but you're not free to fully invest in future without them. Being the end game creates impossible position, because if you move on or find someone else, you're likely to trigger their panic and their pursuit, but their pursuit will be motivated by losing their reserved option rather than by genuine developed capacity. If you start dating someone seriously, if you find healthy relationship, if you move on visibly, the avoidant will likely react. They'll suddenly want you, will suddenly pursue, will suddenly express all the feelings they couldn't express before. But this reaction is about losing their reserved option, about scarcity and competition, about protecting their ego, not about having done work to develop genuine capacity. If you respond to their pursuit, if you take them back, their patterns will likely reassert once the threat of losing you is removed. So your moving on triggers their pursuit, but the pursuit doesn't represent real change, creating impossible choice between staying stuck, waiting, or moving on, and then being pursued by someone still incapable of meeting your needs. Being the endgame creates impossible position, because the longer you accept this status, the more you communicate to yourself that you're not worthy of being chosen now, that you should accept being reserved rather than being prioritized, damaging your self-worth and your standards. Accepting the role of endgame, accepting being kept as option, accepting waiting for someone's future readiness teaches you to devalue yourself, to accept insufficient love, to tolerate being treated as backup rather than as priority. This damages your self-worth over time and makes you vulnerable to accepting similar treatment in future relationships. The position is impossible because maintaining it requires you to continuously accept treatment that undermines your sense of deserving better, that normalizes being an option rather than a choice. What you should do with the knowledge that you're their endgame, understanding that you're the avoidance endgame, that they've reserved you as their ultimate option, provides important information about how they see you and what you mean to them. But this knowledge should inform specific decisions and boundaries rather than creating hope or justifying waiting. What you do with this knowledge determines whether it serves your healing and your future, or whether it keeps you stuck in position that doesn't serve you. You should use this knowledge to validate your perception that the connection was real and significant, confirming that you weren't imagining the depth or misreading their feelings, which supports your healing. Being the endgame confirms that you mattered profoundly, that the connection was genuine, that their feelings for you are real and lasting. This validation is important for your healing because the avoidance patterns and their withdrawal can make you question whether the connection was real, whether you imagined the significance, whether you were alone in feeling what you felt. Knowing you're their end game proves you weren't wrong about the connection's depth or importance. Use this validation to trust your perceptions and to trust that what you experienced was real, which helps you move forward with confidence rather than with doubt about your ability to accurately read relationships. You should use this knowledge to understand that being the end game is about their limitations and their patterns, not about your inadequacy or lack of value. You might have internalized their inability to commit to you as evidence that you weren't special enough, weren't valuable enough, weren't worth choosing. But being the end game reveals the opposite. You're so special, so significant, so important that they cannot handle the vulnerability that being with you would require. Their inability to commit to you is about their incapacity for the intimacy you create, not about you lacking value. Use this understanding to protect your self-worth from being damaged by their patterns, recognizing that their reservation of you as endgame while being unable to be with you now is about their dysfunction, not about your inadequacy. You should use this knowledge to recognize that being the end game is not privilege or honor, but is burden that doesn't serve you, and that you should refuse this role rather than accepting it. Being someone's end game sounds flattering, but in practice means being kept on hold, being treated as option, being valued theoretically, while being unavailable practically. This is not position that serves you or honors you. Recognize that you deserve to be someone's right now, someone's present tense priority, someone's active choice, rather than their reserved future option. Use the knowledge that you're the end game to motivate you to refuse this role, to make yourself unavailable for this position, to communicate through your boundaries and your actions that you're not available to be kept in reserve while they figure themselves out or date other people or wait for theoretical future readiness. You should use this knowledge to maintain or establish firm boundaries that protect you from being kept as option, including complete no contact and refusal to engage with their breadcrumbing or their ambiguity. Knowing you're the end game helps you understand why they breadcrumb, why they maintain ambiguous connection, why they refuse complete closure. They're keeping you as reserved option. Use this understanding to motivate firmer boundaries. Don't accept breadcrumbs. Don't engage with ambiguous communication. Don't allow them to maintain thread of connection that serves their reservation of you. Implement or maintain complete no contact that prevents them from keeping you as option and that forces them to sit with complete loss rather than with maintained possibility. You should use this knowledge to move forward with your life and to become genuinely unavailable as their endgame, removing yourself from the position they've placed you in. The most powerful response to being someone's endgame is to make yourself not available for that role. Move forward with your life. Date people who can show up now. Build relationships where you're priority rather than option. Invest in your own growth and happiness. Become genuinely unavailable, not as strategy to make them want you more, but as authentic choice to live your life for yourself, rather than in reference to their potential future readiness. When you're genuinely unavailable, when you've actually moved on, you're no longer their endgame because you're no longer an option at all. You should use this knowledge to recognize that if they ever do reach out claiming readiness, you should require sustained evidence of genuine change before considering any engagement. Being the end game means they'll likely reach out eventually, when they panic about losing you, when they've convinced themselves they're ready, when their current situation isn't satisfying them. Use the knowledge that you're the end game to prepare for this eventual reach out, rather than being caught off guard. When they reach out, don't accept their word that they've changed or that they're ready. Require sustained evidence, therapy over significant time period, demonstrated change behavior in multiple contexts, developed capacity for vulnerability and emotional availability, concrete evidence that they've done deep work rather than just feeling motivated by scarcity. Being the end game doesn't obligate you to give them chance when they finally decide they're ready. You should use this knowledge to recognize that someone who can only envision being with you in future, but cannot commit to you in present, lacks the capacity for a relationship you deserve, and that this lack of capacity is unlikely to change without intensive therapeutic work they may never do. The endgame framework allows the avoidant to maintain comfortable fantasy. Someday they'll be ready, someday they'll be capable, someday they'll be with you. But this someday often never comes because change requires uncomfortable work they're avoiding. Use the knowledge that you're the end game to recognize that this future vision is fantasy that protects them from facing current limitations and current work required. Don't organize your life around their fantasy future. Make decisions based on their current capacity, which is insufficient, rather than on their theoretical future capacity, which may never develop. You should ultimately use this knowledge to free yourself from any sense of obligation, to wait or to remain available, recognizing that being special to them doesn't create responsibility for you to sacrifice your life and your needs for their eventual readiness. Being the end game is about what you mean to them, about how they've categorized you, about their internal framework, but it creates no obligation for you. You don't owe them waiting. You don't owe them remaining available. You don't owe them reserving yourself while they figure themselves out. Use this knowledge to fully release any guilt or obligation about moving on, about becoming unavailable, about choosing yourself and your present tense needs over their future tense fantasy. You're special, that's true, but being special to someone incapable of healthy relationship doesn't mean you should sacrifice your life waiting for capacity that may never develop. Use the knowledge to validate that you mattered, to understand their patterns, and then to firmly move forward with your life, refusing the role of endgame and instead becoming the priority in your own life and eventually in life of someone who can choose you now rather than reserving you for future that may never come.